So remember, my timing model put the had a forecast for the 320-day cycle low to be made here on April 7. That has happened. You can see the rally that followed April 7. It's quite significant, but the rally itself did not start on April 7. It's just a low. The rally itself started on April 9. The next key date for a cycle high that my timing model had forecasted was May 23rd. Now, I want to be specific about something which I did not bring up in the written issue because I didn't want to get too into the weeds, but technically speaking, these forecasts are for the first day of the rise or the first day of the fall of a cycle. In other words, if I'm predicting, my timing model is predicting a top, that date, that exact date, in this case, May 23rd, is the first day when prices should begin to fall. I know it sounds like a technical thing that doesn't really matter, but if you look at it, forecast turned out to be exactly spot on because May 23rd is not really the high. The high was the day before, May 22nd. May 23rd is when prices began to fall. Now, to be completely honest, to be completely fair, prices began to rise on April 9 for the 320-day cycle low, not really on April 7. So you could say that it's off by a couple of days. Again, I just don't want to get too into the weeds, but technically speaking, I calibrated this model to predict the first day of a rise in the case of a bottom, the first day of a fall in the case of a top. So this May 23rd forecast was spot on to the day. It worked exactly as expected. And just to give it an objective view for how this was a very accurate prediction. Notice that since prices started to rise on April 9, this correction that started on the 23rd of May, last Friday, this is the first time that a corrected move takes prices below this red moving average. If you remember from past videos, the red moving average tracks the 20-day cycle on Bitcoin. So already we know if Bitcoin closes roughly where it's trading at today, which is around 107,000. You can see it here, 107,000 and change. If Bitcoin were to close exactly at this price today on Thursday, that means that this is officially a 20-day cycle top. May 23rd, rather, the 22nd of May is officially a 20-day cycle top, which is what I think this high will prove to be. Now, the way these forecasts work is they have different levels of intensity. Again, don't want to get too specific, don't want to get too into the weeds. But if a forecast has a high intensity reading, it is likely to coincide with an 80-day cycle, high or low, or a 320-day cycle, high or low, as was the case here. April 7 has had the highest intensity reading for a low in all of 2025. That's why I was so confident that the 320-day cycle low was made here. I mean, shortly after this rally, I said this is likely the 320 low. The reason for that is it was high intensity forecast for a low, meaning it was probably going to line up with the 320-day cycle. The reason I bring this up is because even though May 23rd is a forecast for a top, it's lower intensity. I believe that April 7, just to give you an example, is a reading of close to 3, and May 23rd is a reading of about 1.2. So it's a much lower intensity reading, meaning we should not expect a lot of downside from this high. It should just be a corrected move that should last a couple of weeks at most. It could even be over by next week. Now, the move may have some legs because what happened on Friday, and this is fascinating, this is why I pay attention, and I brought that up on the issue as well, is that on May 23rd, Trump announced more tariffs, or he threatened with more tariffs on EU imports. So reopening this can of worms that is the trade war of 2025. Last on the evening, this morning actually for me, because this happened overnight for me here in Europe, I read that a U.S. court had deemed Trump's use of tariffs under emergency powers. They basically said that what he was doing was beyond the scope of what he, the president, could do. So you can see how this is introducing a lot of volatility. But the reason I'm bringing this up is there is an off chance that this turns out into a deeper correction if this tariff war narrative heats up again. Now, I don't really see that from my forecasting model because, like I said, May 23rd is supposed to be a minor high. This is what I was trying to say. It's a minor high. It's a minor turning point. It's not supposed to be major. It's not going to be anything like, or it's very unlikely to be anything like what we saw on April 7. In other words, this move should be over by June. Let's say maybe by next week. But if this high, this turning point, coincides with something happening around the trade war, then maybe it has a few more legs, a few more, maybe there's a bit more downside than is implied in the intensity reading on my forecasting model. And the reason I bring that up is because the next key turning point on my timing model, however, it's not really highlighting whether it's high or low. It just says it's the next key turning point. That is for late June. So that is for about, I think it was June 22nd. I'm gonna get back to that next week. I'm gonna review now that this high is confirmed.